A rule in a great house is rarely about the thing it names. It is about the person who made it and how much it would cost him to look at what is underneath. At Fenwoods, they told every new servant on the first morning, in the back passage, before the fires were laid, that nobody was to touch the instrument in the music room. They told the widow who came in October to keep the linen, and they told her a second time, because she had the sort of face people repeat themselves to. She heard them both times. She kept the linen for 11 weeks without going near the door. Then a girl who had been beaten for opening it needed proving innocent, and there was only one way to prove it. Fenwoods stood in a wet fold of the moor edge, with beech woods on 2 sides, and nothing at all on the third, a long block of dark gritstone, with narrow windows, and a slate roof, going green at the north gable. Wren Ashby came up the drive on foot in the first week of October, with a bag under her arm, because the cart from the market town had been sent on another errand, and nobody had thought to mention it. She was 27. She had been married at 19 to a man who sold pianofortes in a town of 11,000 people, and widowed at 25 when he went through the ice on the mill dam, and the shop had gone to his brother inside a month because the lease was in his name, and grief is not a legal instrument. 6 years behind that counter had taught her the whole trade in the way a shop teaches it, which is thoroughly and from underneath. She had regulated actions, she had spliced boards, she had gone out in the trap on the tuning rounds because her husband disliked the cold, and she did not. Nobody had ever paid her for any of it. The parish had found her a place at Fenwoods, keeping linen at £22 a year, and she had taken it because £22 is £22. Mrs. Threlkeld received her in the flagged passage. She was 59, in black bombazine, with the keys at her waist, and 38 years in the house behind her. £22, your keep, 1 gown at Whitsun. You do not go into the West Wing without you are sent for, and nobody touches the instrument in the music room. The instrument, ma'am. It has been shut since His Grace's brother died. It stays shut. There is a rule, and the rule does not have a reason attached to it, and you would do well not to go looking for one. Wren said nothing. She was given a room over the laundry with a bedstead, a washstand, a window that let in the wind on 3 sides, and no fire, because the coal for the upper rooms was accounted for, and there was nothing accounted for her. There was no key in the lock. She wedged the door with her boot, and slept in her cloak, and got up at 5:30. She kept the linen properly, which nobody had done in 4 years. She found 6 pairs of sheets, where the book said 31, and wrote it down, and said nothing yet. She carried her own coal, and on her 9th day, going through the west passage with an armful of pillow slips, because it was the short way, and she was late, she stopped outside a closed door, and heard, through 2 inches of oak, the sound a wire makes when it lets go on its own. It is not a musical sound. It is a flat, dry snap, like a fence staple pulling. Wren Ashby stood in a cold passage with her arms full of linen, and knew, with total certainty, that on the other side of that door something was tearing itself apart in the dark. She did not open it. She counted the days instead. Over 11 weeks, she heard it 4 more times, and she wrote the dates on the inside cover of the linen book in pencil, because she had learned in 6 years behind a counter that a woman with no standing writes things down and waits. Halloran Vane, 5th Duke of Ardwick, came home in the 2nd week of December without sending word, wet to the shoulders, having ridden the last 9 miles rather than sit in the carriage. He was 36, heavy through the shoulders, and he had inherited, 4 years ago, when his elder brother went off a road in fog. There was a stiffness in his left hand, where a hawser had run out through it at speed, on a deck in the Baltic at 23, when he was a second son with no expectations and had gone to sea to be anywhere else. The 2 outer fingers did not close. He had not played anything since he was 19, and his brother had been the one who played, and the last time that instrument had been open, there had been a man sitting at it, who was now under a stone in the chapel. The rule had been made in the week after the funeral by a man of 32 who could not go into that room, and it had stood for 4 years because nobody had ever made him rescind it. The trouble began on the Thursday. A kitchen girl named Tibby, 14 years old, was found in the West Passage with the music room door standing open behind her, and Mrs. Threlkeld had her by the arm before she could say a word. She was given a beating and told she would go to the parish on Monday for theft, because a shut room is a locked box and an open door is intent. Tibby said she had heard a noise. Nobody in the servants' hall believed her, or wanted to. Wren finished folding the counterpane she had in her hands. Then she went down the West Passage and opened the music room door herself, in front of 2 housemaids and Bishop the footman, and left it standing open, and walked into the cold and the dust, and lifted the lid. She did not play it. She put 2 fingers on the rest plank and 1 hand flat underneath the case, and stood there for a quarter of an hour without making a sound. Then she went and knocked on the study door. Mrs. Threlkeld was already there. "Your Grace," Wren said. The girl heard a string go. So did I. On the 6th of October, the 19th, the 2nd of November, the 22nd, and the 9th of this month, and the dates are in the front of the linen book in pencil. She did not open that door to steal. There is nothing in that room but a case, wire, and about 400 pounds of ironwork, and none of it goes in an apron. The room went very quiet. "You put your hands on it," the Duke said. "I put my ear on it, Your Grace. That is worse." He came round the desk. He was a large man, and he did it slowly, and she did not move. "Who are you?" "Wren Ashby. My husband sold instruments in Kendal for 11 years, and I kept the shop, and I did the work in the back of it, and when he drowned his brother had the lease, and I had a bag." She held her hands still at her sides. "The soundboard in that room is splitting along the grain from the treble end, and it has run about 7 inches, and the strings are letting go, one at a time, because the bridge is moving with it. If it stands another 2 winters, you will not have an instrument. You will have a box with wire in it." Halloran Vane looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled the chair from beside the fire, set it under the lamp, and sat down on it himself, so that he was not standing over her. "Sit," he said, "and tell me why it is splitting." It was splitting because the flue behind the music room chimney breast had been blocked since a jackdaw's nest came down in it, so that the room had never once been properly dried, and the damp came off that wall in a slow, constant breath onto a spruce board 11 feet away. The flue was cleared in 6 days by 2 men from the village working in the sleet, and the bill came to £8.12. Tibby was not sent to the parish. She was put in the still room and told to stop crying, and Wren asked for the instrument to be moved 9 feet off that wall and lifted on blocks, and left with the lid up and no fire in the room for 5 weeks to come to itself. Mrs. Threlkeld did not oppose it aloud. She simply arranged that the coal for the music room did not arrive, and that Wren's dinner was carried up at whatever hour was least convenient, and that the £22 due at Christmas was entered somehow against the following quarter. Wren said nothing and slept in her cloak, and was in the music room at 6 every morning, with her husband's roll of levers open on a chair, and she worked the way the trade taught, which is slowly and from underneath. She let the pins come to tension over 3 weeks, and not 3 days, because 4 years of slack does not come back in an afternoon, and an old plank will pull its pins if you are greedy. She spliced the board from below with a spruce shim, cut with a borrowed chisel, and hide glue, heated in the still room, cleated it, and left it a fortnight. She replaced 9 strings. She refaced 4 hammers with felt she cut herself. She wrote every operation, and every date, and every cost in a ruled book, and the whole came to £5 4 and the loan of a chisel. And the Duke took to coming and sitting in the room in the evenings, with the estate correspondence on his knee, and not talking, and once she looked up and found him asleep. In the 3rd week she said, without stopping, "Your hand does not close. No, a hawser, off Riga." I was 23 and running away from a house I have since inherited. He flexed it. There is not much point to it now. There is a great deal of point to it. You have 8 fingers, and a thumb, and a half, and the left hand mostly holds ground. She set the lever down. You are afraid it will sound like it did the last time you heard it. He did not answer that. It was the first time he had refused a question instead of turning it aside, and she found she liked him better for it. Lady Cazenove came in February. She was the late Duke's cousin, 68, and she came with a solicitor and Mrs. Threlkeld 2 steps behind her, and she went into the music room, without knocking, on the afternoon Wren was setting the temperament. "So this is the person," she said. "Your Grace, I shall be direct, since the county has been direct with me all winter. There is a laundry widow under this roof, who has been alone with you, in a closed room, until midnight since December, who has been given the run of your brother's instrument against your own standing order, and who has drawn estate money for materials. There is a word for that arrangement, and it is not repair. She goes to the market town on Thursday, and there is the matter of what this family's name has cost." Halloran came up out of his chair, with something dangerous in his face. Wren put 2 fingers on his sleeve. "Sit down," she said. "It will not take long." She went to the chair, where the ruled book lay, and turned round with it, and 3 loose papers. "Lady Cazenove, before we come to my character, this estate carries a heading called Chimneys and Flues, and against it there was drawn £360 in 4 years. The flue behind that wall was cleared in December by 2 men from the village in the sleet for £8.12. I have the receipt, and I have the men, and they are in the yard now, if you would care to ask them what came out of it, which was 4 years of jackdaw." She laid the papers on the lid and turned them so the room could read them. A steward cannot draw against a heading without a countersignature, and all 4 years carry Mrs. Threlkeld's hand. And 1 payment of £41 went through the Kendal Bank into an annuity, and the annuity is in your name, my lady, and the Michaelmas payment on it was stopped in January by His Grace's man of business, which I imagine is why you are standing in this room in February. The solicitor examined the carpet with great attention. In the doorway, Bishop the footman stood with a tray and did not move an inch. "You are a laundry widow," Lady Cazenove said. "I was cheaper than looking," Wren said. "This house has been paying for that for 4 years. The door is behind you, my lady. Mind the sill, it's swelled with the damp, and nobody has ever taken a plane to it." They went. Nobody was prosecuted, because Wren asked that nobody be, and Halloran never entirely understood it, and never entirely stopped thinking about it. The county said the Duke of Ardwick had lost his reason, and said it for about 6 weeks, and then said instead that the woman at Fenwoods had found £360 in a chimney account with a pencil, and that a wise man did not send a bill to that house twice. On a Thursday at the end of March the work was finished. Wren did not tell him. She left the music room door standing open, sat down at 2 in the afternoon, and began the slow business of proving the temperament with a set of chords that were not music and were not meant to be. He was in the stable yard. The sound came out of the open door and across the gravel, and he was in the passage before he knew he had started walking, and he stopped in the doorway, with his hat still on, and held the frame with his good hand. The room had come back. "You said there was not much point to it," Wren said, without turning round, and got up off the stool and moved it 9 inches to the left, which is where a man with a stiff left hand wants it. Then she went and stood at the window with her back to him and let him alone. He sat down. He put both hands on the keys and did not play for a long time, and when he did, it was slow and clumsy, and the 2 outer fingers dragged, and it was 6 bars of something his brother had taught him at 11, and he stopped at the 7th and put his forehead on the fallboard. It took a while. "Wren," he said eventually. It was the first time. "The stool is too low," she said. "I will felt it." He laughed, and it came out of him rough and startled, like something rusted being turned over. He asked her in April with the lid up. He did not kneel, because that would have made it about him. "I have a house that breathes damp, a title I did not want, a hand that will not close, and 1 instrument that works," he said. "Every part of that is already yours." "Then I will name terms," Wren said. because I would rather be asked for something useful than thanked. She named 3. That the 2 men from the village be kept on the year round, since flues do not wait for spring. That Tibby be apprenticed properly, and paid, and taught to hear a 5th go sour, because a trade that lives in one pair of hands dies with the hands, and that no rule in that house ever again be allowed to stand without a reason attached to it, since a rule with nothing under it is only a man refusing to look. 4 years on, the north gable was sound, and the music room was warm, and there were 2 girls in it, 3 mornings a week, with their ears against the rest plank. Mrs. Threlkeld lived at Whitby on £40 a year, and told a version in which she had been shamefully used. Lady Kazanov did not visit. On a wet evening in October, Wren came in with the levers under her arm, and found him at the keys with his stiff hand, holding the ground, and their daughter asleep across his knee. And she stood in the doorway and said nothing, because there was nothing that wanted saying. A rule in a great house is never about the thing it names. It turns out the door was not shut to protect the instrument from anybody. It was shut to protect the house from the sound of the instrument being alive. If Wren keeping 5 dates in pencil for 11 weeks got you the way it got me, you know what to do. Hit that like button and send this one to somebody who believes the person nobody consulted is usually the only one in the building who can hear the problem. Subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another of these long historical dramas. And tell me down in the comments, what was the moment you knew she had already won? Was it the pencil, the chair he pulled out, or the jackdaw? I will see you in the next one.